Hello, First Certificate. Welcome to Session 4. In Session 4, we're going to deal with the speaking part of the First Certificate exam. First of all, I'm going to ask you to click on the link that I provided for you in number 2. This allows you to see the overall format of the First Certificate exam, including the speaking. Once you have looked at that, please click on the link in number 3. It will take you to an official Cambridge video that's been posted on YouTube and that will show you the speaking exam in its entirety. In speaking part 1, the examiner asks each partner some get-to-know-you questions. When you're doing the speaking exam, never forget that the examiner is always evaluating you. So don't give simple yes/no answers. Give complete answers. So for example, in this part of the exam, you're going to give answers that are about 2 to 3 sentences, and if you can, give an example. You can expect questions about your hobbies, your studies, your friends and family, holidays, sports, things you like and don't like, and your plans for the future. If you don't understand the examiner, don't worry. Simply politely ask the examiner to repeat the question. For example, could you say that again, please? In part 2 of the exam, you will be asked to speak about a picture for approximately 1 minute. Unlike the PET exam, you are not asked to describe the photos. This is a typical mistake that people make on the First Certificate exam. They start describing what they can see in the photo. That's not the First Certificate, that's the PET exam. So the First Certificate asks you to compare the photos and to say something about them. So you're going to use approximately half your time comparing the photos and the other half answering the question. And remember, the question is written above the photos, so you can't forget it. You can see it as you're comparing the photographs. Remember, no describing, comparing, and then make sure you answer the question. In speaking part 3, you will be asked to evaluate different options with your partner and make a choice. One of the problems that students encounter when doing the speaking part of the exam is that they're nervous, and this is normal. And one strategy that you can use to help deal with your nerves is to simply deal with the options, talk about the options in a clockwise order. So I typically would start at 1 o'clock and work my way around the clock. You don't have to do this, of course. You can speak about the options in any order you like. But if you're particularly nervous and you want to make sure you don't find yourself talking about just 1 or 2 options, then I would suggest starting at 1 o'clock and working your way around the clock clockwise. So you're going to be evaluated not only on how you speak, but how you interact with your partner. So it's sometimes helpful if you have some set phrases that you and your partner can use. For example, when you're about to start this part of the exam, perhaps talk to your partner beforehand and decide who's going to start speaking. A typical thing that you can say is, "Shall I begin?" When you need to move to another item in this part of the exam, perhaps you could say, "So what about?" Right? Because it's very easy, given that you're nervous, that you might continue talking about the same item, and you will have several, 5, 7 items that you will need to talk about in this time. So that you end your turn and give your partner a chance to speak, maybe you could ask a question. What do you think of? What do you think about? Do you agree? All right? You don't want to dominate the conversation because this does not work in your favor either. The examiners are going to evaluate you, among other things, on how well you interact with your partner. And dominating the conversation is not the way to interact. It's a back and forth and a give and take. And given that you will most likely be doing the exam with a friend, this will make it easier for you. If you need to interrupt your partner, and remember, your partner is probably dying for you to interrupt them, you can say something like, "Sorry to interrupt, but," or "Just a second." Perhaps you want to agree with your partner. Right. Good point. I was just thinking that. Or disagree, because there's nothing wrong with disagreeing when you're doing this part of the exam. For example, I'm not so keen on that. I think it would be better to... Finally, in the end, you're going to be asked to reach a decision, although you're not required to reach a decision. However, I would strongly suggest that you and your partner agree to agree for the simple reason that it's easier for you. So, for example, one of you might say, are we both in favor of... Okay, so we both agree that is the best option. It's not necessary to agree, remember, but quite frankly, it's easier. Part 4 of the speaking exam is an extension of Part 3. So, for example, if the task in Part 3 was related to travel, then perhaps the questions in Part 4 will be about this same subject. So the questions in Part 4 are not written down. Therefore, it's very important for you to listen carefully. Explain your answers. When you're speaking to the examiner, look at the examiner. And when you're speaking to your partner, look at your partner. Finally, when the exam is finished, say goodbye to the examiner, but don't ask how you did. The examiner can't answer you. Also, don't start speaking to your partner in your own language until you have left the room. Make a good impression. Remember, from the time you walk in that room until the time you leave that room, the examiner is evaluating you, so be very aware of that. All right? So, best of luck. I look forward to practicing more speaking with you once we see each other in class. Okay? Bye-bye.